All right, welcomed councillors and members in the public gallery. Nala Kadich Wajak Mort Kayan Kadak Nija Walilap Buja. We're Jinang Wajak Kadijin, we're Knitting Bula Yeye. We acknowledge the Wajak people as the traditional owners of the Greater Fremantle Walilap area, and we recognise that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important today. This meeting's being recorded and it's being streamed live online. While care is taken to maintain privacy, visitors in the public gallery and members of the public submitting a question will be captured in the recording. Attendance, apologies and leaves of absence. Everyone is in attendance tonight, recognising that Councillor Thompson is running late and will join us as soon as he can. I've got two applications for leaves of absence. Councillor Van Dawson from Monday 1st September to Sunday 7th September, and Councillor Graham from Saturday 19th October to Friday 24th October. So perhaps we can move those together. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Moughlin. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Disclosures of interest by members in relation to tonight's agenda. Councillor Williamson Wong.
Thank you. I have a proximity interest on 250815, which is the South Fremantle. Hold on, should that be 15 or 1 that I've written down? Yeah, 15. The South Fremantle Heritage Area, as two properties, 81 and 85 South Street, are included, and they are opposite 83 South Street, which is owned by my parents. So I'll be leaving the chamber.
And Councillor Graham.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. Similarly to Councillor Williamson Wong, I have my property, 27 Martha Street, is implicated in the new heritage area, and it's been listed at a higher level or something, I believe. So I'll be declaring that interest as a proximity and will leave the chamber.
Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. Ditto, I also own a property in South Fremantle that is adjacent to properties on the heritage list, and also my property, I think, was removed from one of the categories as well, the contributory category. So I will be declaring that as a proximity issue and leaving the chamber.
Excellent, thank you. All right, we have no responses to previous public questions taken on notice in the minutes. However, I would note that Mr Tattersall has supplied extra information to a number of the people who came and asked questions last time, and with that I'd note that Graham Tattersall is acting CEO for this meeting. Okay, we're going to go to public question time. In general, where we have planning matters on the agenda, we often group the planning questions closer to those particular planning matters. So I might go to the general questions first, and then I will track back to specific items. I think we've got all the sign-ins on this sheet. So the first two are on the general matters, Leonie Lundy, followed by Adrian Glamorgan. So Leonie, if you want to come up to the microphone, it's 3 minutes, and the microphone looks to be on from where I am. Thanks.
Thank you. 6 months, still no AUKUS public meetings, as per our annual general members elected motion, which was passed. I understand this was discussed at the recent PSWMA board meeting. Was there any reporting back to councillors? I understand no. And not even a courtesy touch base with me as proposer or our group, re this from the Mayor nor the CEO of this council. I'm in contact with Warwick, Director of Perth South West Metro Alliance, but he's not our elected councillor, nor responsible for actioning a past AGME motion. Mind you, the only councillor who responds to my occasional emails in a timely fashion, if at all, is Councillor Ben Lorber. Thank you, Ben. Coincidental or not, just before we go into caretaker mode, yesterday it became known that Defence would hold a public meeting on the 16th in Rockingham and the 18th of September in Fremantle. Oddly, the location and time still to be confirmed, and less than 3 weeks to promote them. A major concern is contrary to the meeting requirements as per the past motion. It appears the participation of MAPW, CCWA, Nuclear Free WA and Stop AUKUS have all been overlooked, perhaps just arrogantly ignored by Defence. We can only assume that Defence is just trying to tick a box. There is no genuine attempt to gain social licence nor hear our concerns and as to why we're opposed to AUKUS. We're pretty tired of being strung along. If Defence does get it together, we trust they won't try to assign the newly appointed ASA AUKUS advocate now in charge of community and public engagement, Paul Myler, to our panel when our motion specifically calls for a technical expert. At the December 2024 Freo Politics in the Pub, Mr Myler wasn't even aware of the forced posture agreement under which the US rotations are to take place. Nor was he aware of the disinformation fed to the community by ASA, Australian Submarine Agency, regarding the grade of low-level waste to be generated by the US submarines during in-water maintenance. Hopefully the next council body will learn from the past experience and not be so blinded by AUKUS and an inefficient, deceptive Defence who clearly don't care about social licence and have led the PSWMA along, it seems, just as they have the Cockburn Sound communities. Hopefully the next council will also place more emphasis on advocating for public health and safety and oppose our community being put at risk under AUKUS with Cockburn Sound being a nuclear target. Realise how Cockburn Sound and communities will be impacted by the craziness of nuclear submarines sharing a shipping channel with numerous cargo ships from diverse origins and with a who knows what cargo, all in close proximity to a highly toxic and inflatable industries in Kwinana. Admit to our community that Gage Roads is a safe, remote anchorage for the nuclear-powered submarines should there be a radiation leak. That is, they could be towed just a couple of kilometres from here off Fremantle coast.
Leonie, I'm sorry, that's 3 minutes, so if you could wind up, that'd be great.
Yep. And please accept accidents do happen, but the inherent secrecy means we don't get to hear about them. Fremantle has always been a strong voice of peace and opposition to nuclear. I sincerely hope people charged with responsibilities wake up before it's too late, and especially for our children. Thank you.
Thank you. And Adrian?
Thank you, Councillor Kaya. You may know there are 700 American bases around the world, and Cockburn Sound is about to become one vicariously. And wherever there is one of those US bases, you are inclined to find Superfund or waste sites that are left behind when the Americans decide they want to go somewhere else. There's a lot at stake with AUKUS and submarines coming, and I thought the principle that we have as a council, that when you see graffiti or a broken window, you fix it immediately, might apply to the omni-shambles that is currently AUKUS. They are going to organise national defence, but they can't organise a public meeting within 6 months. They don't even know where it is yet, but it will be in 3 weeks, so I hope you'll be there in time. The problem is that the council is meant to protect the community, and the best way to do that around issues of environmental health, community safety, and the implementation of democracy is to respond immediately when you see the broken window or the graffiti. And this failure to act is one of those very early signs that all the promises and the nods and the smiling charm isn't delivered when it comes to something as basic as community consultation. Now, the chances are, if they're not going to include the public who are most technically involved, from the people like the Conservation Council or Stop AUKUS or Nuclear Free, if they're not going to come to a public meeting and listen to those people in a respectful way as we listen to them, that really it is a box-taking exercise. We know that AUKUS is a provocation to war, an enrichment of the war trade, and a misdirection of funds away from much-needed infrastructure. Well, we can't stop that part of it yet, but we can make sure that when they fail to keep their promises, that we come in very respectfully but firmly and insist that they honour their word. If they can't do that now, what are they going to be doing with damaged submarines if they come into Cockburn Sound? And the Australian Department of Defence is part of that. We want something done immediately from the Fremantle Council that asks us to be treated with respect, the council and the community. AUKUS is financially irresponsible, pragmatically misguided, and spiritually, ethically and moral bereft. And this is just a very small case example. You and I can't stop it today, but we can show that when we have agreements, that they need to be kept. We need to make sure that if they make a promise to have a meeting, or they make a promise to protect Cockburn Sound environmentally, if they make a promise to work with the community, and they make a promise to have public integrity through consultation, that they do that. I'd ask that councillors and council staff please fix this broken window. Later, you can join us in getting rid of AUKUS for good. Everybody's good. But right now, let's just have a public meeting that we all know about where it is and when it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Adrian. I'll go to the acting CEO for some response, but I might also add some comments myself.
Thank you, through the chair. In terms of the council's position, the council did support the motion to call for a meeting at the meeting of the 26th of February, and supported the intent of the motion from the AGM. Officers have engaged with the Perth Southwest Metropolitan Alliance and advocated for a community meeting. I attended the CEO forum on Monday this week. It was discussed again. There have been provisional dates proffered, as you referenced, on the 16th and the 18th of September. As of yet, we haven't received a confirmation. So it was pushed again. We're waiting for confirmation. As soon as we hear something, we'll make sure that people are made aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just add to that. So there were a couple of assertions, I think, there that the PSMWA board had met on this issue. The PSMWA board is meeting this coming Monday, so there hasn't yet been a meeting on it, and therefore no feedback has been coming out of that. I haven't received an email, Leonie, since the AGME from you, so I think I might not be on your emailing list. So perhaps, and I'm not sure about other councillors, but if you're not getting responses, that's strange. So I can update you with what I know. I'm incredibly uncomfortable with the length of time it's taken to get this meeting organised, and as well as the work PSMWA have been doing, I've been advocating directly to decision makers on this meeting. I met with the Deputy PM staff last week on this issue. Specifically, I provided them with a copy of the AGME motion so that they were absolutely clear on what the community had requested. We have provisionally booked the town hall for the 18th of September because we think it's correct that the Fremantle Town Hall be a host venue for this. I think it's certainly had a long history of important community conversations in the town hall, and that's where we would like to see it. Our job is to facilitate this meeting happening, and like I said, I think we've been uncomfortable with the length of time it's taken, and we're very keen to get a date locked in, hence booking the town hall. And I think fundamentally, I won't speak for everyone, I would agree with you that with nuclear matters, given the severity of any potential mishap, transparency and clear answers to questions need to be provided, and there needs to be an open forum for that. So that's what we've been advocating for. I appreciate I've been advocating directly and behind closed doors, not via social media, because that's kind of, it's not very 2025, but probably not where I'm at either as a person. And we're very hopeful that we get an outcome this coming month. So we'll keep you posted. And yeah, continue to hold the town hall for the 18th of September. All right. Now we have people on item 15, which is the South Fremantle Heritage Area. We have had some discussion as to whether councillors who have to leave the room for the debate should also leave the room for the public submissions. I think it's kind of tidier to do it that way, so my intention would be to have the other speakers on the agenda speak now if they wish, or hold to the items that they wish to speak on. And then what I'll do is run through the other business and then go to the South Fremantle Heritage item with the elected members out of the room for questions. If that's all right with the elected members concerned, seems to be. I have Marianne Goodlick on item 16. If you wish to speak now, Marianne.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I respectfully urge, this is on the matter, the draft city plan. I respectfully urge the council to defer voting on the draft city plan 2025 as the current document is inadequate and fails to provide meaningful protection for Fremantle's heritage. Fremantle's historic character is a nationally significant asset, and the policies proposed in the draft plan risk irreversible damage to its unique cultural and architectural legacy. The city plan emphasises urban transformation but largely omits heritage from its strategic priorities, offering no clear mechanisms to protect or integrate Fremantle's rich heritage assets into planning, policy or design. Existing heritage tools and community resources remain unutilised, while high-impact redevelopment proposals are sanctioned without heritage-sensitive frameworks or meaningful public engagement focused on conservation. The draft plan weakens heritage protection by lacking a clear focus on heritage, offering limited explanation and failing to integrate heritage meaningfully into its overarching vision, which emphasises diversity, livability and sustainability without founding it in heritage. The key heritage policies remain disconnected from the broader city-scale plan, missing opportunities to use heritage as a strategic asset for identity or economic development. Additionally, bold redevelopment proposals are presented without adequate safeguards or design frameworks based in heritage, and there is minimal emphasis on community engagement from a heritage-led perspective. The city's own survey highlights that Fremantle's built heritage is seen as iconic by the community. When asked which precincts are the most unique and distinctive, respondents ranked heritage-rich areas like the West End and Fremantle Oval prison precincts highly, while Walliap Court, despite its central location, ranked near the bottom. This suggests the community strongly associates Fremantle's identity with its historic character. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I've got a number of people here to speak on item 18, the North Fremantle Development Precinct. So unless you want to wait for that item to come around, I'd be happy for you to speak now. So I've got Paul Gamblin first up on that one.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, councillors and officers. Thank you for this opportunity. I speak on behalf of the Leighton Action Coalition, which has been advocating for the Leighton Port area for 25 years to ensure its long-term amenity and viability as a regional coastal node able to respond to erosion and climate impacts without destructive and expensive heavy engineering. We are deeply concerned that a proponent is lobbying for the urban deferred zoning to be lifted. This is entirely premature and unjustified in our view. The community has long called for a rigorous, open and informed process to determine the necessary coastal reserve requirements for the area. This has not yet happened. We support the spirit and direction of the officer's recommendation, but they believe they should be much stronger and focus much more on the matters I've just mentioned. Also point out that the basis for the current setback is the aspect of Future of Fremantle that inadequately dealt with this part of the coast, and that's widely known. It was a cursory treatment for this area, but it seems to be very influential. So we warn you about that, and to be very cautious about that. What it would mean is a minimalist approach to coastal setbacks, which would ultimately require groins, seawalls, heavy engineering, and would undermine public access and the natural aspect of that beach. So, have a question and something we'd love the councillors and implore the councillors to think about as part of their response. How will council actively deliver a public, open and informed process to determine setback and foreshore needs? We urge councillors to add this to the recommendation. This needs to achieve two things: to enable restored dunes and natural responses to sea level rise and other climate impacts in an eroding coast, and secondly, to guarantee public access and amenity for what is a regional beach that serves over 100 suburbs. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I think that will probably be responded to in debate. And next I have Rod Dixon.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors, for the opportunity to speak to you this evening on the same item, 18, the request for the lifting of urban deferment for North Fremantle. I wanted to introduce myself, Rod Dixon. I'm one of the directors of Row Group Town Planners. We're working on behalf of the landowners on this matter. And I guess talk through with you 2 or 3 items that relate to both the report and the recommendation itself. So one of them is process. This is a lifting of urban deferment request. There has already been an MRS amendment that defined both a regional foreshore reserve and an urban deferred extent. So I notice in the report that there's reference to preliminary comment or a request for a preliminary comment, and under the report heading consultation, it suggests that once comments have been received, the WAPC would initiate an amendment to the MRS, excuse me, and it also suggests that the WAPC will again contact the city and the amendment will be advertised. That's not actually correct. So the amendment has already occurred. The land is urban deferred. We are now just considering solely whether or not to lift the land to urban zone and possibly a concurrent local scheme zone or not. So that's materially significant if you consider the content of the report and the matters being raised by, I guess, your administration and the community. So the next engagement and public advertising occurs with the subsequent precinct structure plan. But zoning is needed for us to formally lodge that structure plan with the city so that everyone can have their debate on the detail and all the elements within that. That's really important. Coastal foreshore. Appreciate that it's an important matter for council, administration, the community. Again, I accept the content within the report and the administration's desire to consider this further, but the lifting report itself is purely considering the lifting from urban deferment to urban. Okay, so you actually need the precinct structure plan and the elements that it considers, because it considers context, not just colour change, to engage in and discuss those matters. The lifting report does not get advertised further. The subsequent precinct structure plan must be publicly advertised. Integrated transport study. The report to council rightly acknowledges the need for this study and recognises that as part of our lifting request, we have put forward a movement network plan. What we tried to do was address the fact that the need for infrastructure upgrades relate to our site, but they sit around our site. They don't necessarily go through our site. So we put forward a suggested interim and ultimate set of plans, indicative for further review. Again, they are not considered as part of the lifting request. They were prepared to inform the lifting request. The integrated transport study, which the state government have now funded and got underway, will progress in theory with a precinct structure plan if we're able to achieve zoning, because we need that precinct structure plan to be able to articulate local roads, dwellings, local land uses, open space, foreshore, etc., access points. And that then would inform a broader discussion about infrastructure need, station, connectivity to the wider North Fremantle community, etc. So I think they're important points. So with those comments in mind, and given the tone of the report is generally acknowledging that an urban development outcome here is fairly logical, I would suggest to you that the city could still place on record its key matters, the two that are outlined in the report and recommendation. But if lifting is supported tonight and subsequently approved, it allows zoning to be established. This provides the required legal head of power for a precinct structure plan to be submitted to the city for formal consideration of all the matters outlined, and it has to be publicly advertised. So the city will consider the PSP before and again after advertising. So an alternate recommendation, if you're of a mind to consider it.
We are sort of getting to the end of the 3 minutes.
Yep,
So
I'll be
have
very
you
quick.
tabled the alternatives that you proposed or sent it through prior?
I have not, no. And it's very simple to read. It leaves 1 as it is. 2 simply is amended to suggest support the lifting of urban deferment together with concurrent development zoning, but require resolution of the following matters as a prerequisite to subsequent precinct structure planning. And then you retain the 2 matters.
All right.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rod. So we'd usually give elected members the opportunity to ask questions if we were doing this just before the item. Does anyone wish to ask questions of the proponent? No. Thanks, Rod.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and Armando Dabru on the same topic.
Sorry, Mayor Hunter, I may have put down 18 where I think I'm actually speaking on 23.
That makes more sense. I was like, really, it's nowhere near the club.
No, a little bit. All of it was done a little bit on the run.
It's all good. Roll on with 23. Thank you.
Continue. Thank you. Okay, so firstly, thanks to everyone for allowing us the opportunity to speak in support of item 23, which relates to the sports clubs leases for Gilbert Fraser Reserve. Our initial lease at Gilbert Fraser Reserve started in 1994 and expired in 2014. So we've been in a holding pattern for a little bit over 10 years for a variety of reasons, and we're really pleased that with the assistance of and guidance with some councillors and council officers that we've finally reached a point that allows us to move forward with the lease. It's not perfection, but it certainly is progress, and one that we believe can work. Our body has, obviously the sports clubs have been based in Gilbert Fraser for 100 plus years across the board, and we part of our community, but part of our lease involves giving the sports clubs that are the main leaseholders the right of way, plus assisting any other smaller clubs as we go along with community groups and the community. And the ratepayers themselves, which are a part of our setup. So that's essentially it. As I say, the journey has been 10 years to get to where we are, and we feel with the guidance and assistance and the knowledge of our own situation that the lease is one that will be a step forward and allow us to finally put this behind us and see the next 20 years or 10 plus 10 evolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Armando. It's my understanding the rest of the people present in the gallery are here to speak on item 15. Is there anyone who's... Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll hold off on that in a minute, for a minute, and just get through the other sort of procedural items on the agenda, and then we'll come to item 15 as our first item, which allows the elected members to leave the room who need to. So I don't believe we have any petitions tonight. Deputations and presentations, I don't believe we have any. Do I have a mover to confirm the minutes from the 13th of August? Councillor Van Dawson and Councillor Sullivan seconding. All those in favour? The minutes? Yep. Is there any elected member communication? Councillor Graham and Councillor Lang.
Just a quick update from Perth Southwest NRM meeting. It's held in Kwinana. last week. We welcomed a new facilitator who replaced Kath Bodrick and Rebecca Cooper. We had updates on the first stage of our regional fox monitoring program. The big lesson there is it's not as much as what we're doing for the foxes at the moment. The heavy lifting's been in the collaboration and coordination of 6 local governments, which I think is a really strong framework for us. Kwinana ran through the urban forest plan. Interesting to note, $1,100 per tree is what they've calculated for planting and maintenance, and they've allocated $2 million a year for their canopy target. Interesting, I'll touch on this in the item later on, but interesting, they went out to their version of MySay and got 70% support from their community on spending that money. And it was the last meeting that we held, so there was a visioning for the future, and acknowledging that there'll be new representatives in the room at the next meeting, and an update that it looks likely we'll be sharing canopy mapping across the region as well in 2026, which is really good news for us. We haven't measured our canopy since 2017, I believe. So, and that'll be probably more cost efficient. That was it. Thanks for coming, Jen.
And just quickly to acknowledge all the work that Councillor Lang has done chairing SWECTF. I think it's something that we all really appreciate, and appreciate the communication back to Council. I think you kicked some really big goals in that as well. So thank you for doing that. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. On Monday, myself, Councillor Thompson and Mr Tattersall attended the Welga Zone meeting at Coburn. It was a fairly uneventful meeting, but I'll just touch on a couple of items. City of Melville put up a planning item, which was carried with amendment. Pretty boring stuff, so if anybody wants to read it, wait for the minutes to come out, I'd suggest. One of the more interesting ones was the city of, I think it's the city now of Kwinana, isn't it? They're pushing again for 4-year terms without the biannual mid-year cycle. They've tried it once before and it came back to the zone on Monday. Again, that was approved with amendment. Now that will go to the State Council where it is likely not to succeed. However, it is interesting, the report was very thorough, and just touching on a couple of things, there is a considerable cost saving if you just have four-year terms and not the biennial ones. So that is something we have to look at. At the moment, they'd calculated that across all local governments, it costs millions and millions and millions to run these biennial type elections. So that was quite good and something for us to think about. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen before this election, but I think down the track, WA is the only jurisdiction that doesn't have it in Australia. So that was another sort of interesting thing. So we might be behind the times over here still. But the reason I'm really speaking is he's not in the room. It was Councillor Thompson's last Welga Zone meeting, and we all know the contribution that Councillor Thompson has made to the Welga community. He's been on the Welga Zone meeting for as long as I think he's been a councillor, which is about 37 years now. He has been chair of that meeting for a number of years, and he was, as I said, on the State Council as well, which, you know, feather in his cap. He's been on so many committees to represent Fremantle. It's beyond belief what he's done. He sort of received a lot of acclamation from the current chair, Councillor Karen Wheatland from Melville, and she was very grateful that he stood down a couple of years ago to let her have the opportunity to be the chair. So there was a bit of fun there. Our good friend from Coburn, Mayor Logan Howlett, of course, he was, I'm spreading this out because I'm hoping Doug might walk in, but he's not. He got elected to council about the same time as Councillor Thompson, so they've had a very long association on many committees. And we were lucky enough to have Paul Kelly, who's the Welga Deputy President, at the meeting on Monday night, and he also spoke fondly of Councillor Thompson. So look, I know we'll get our opportunity in October to say our thanks to Councillor Thompson, But I just thought I'd relay that from the Welga zone, highly thought of, highly respected, and he's a life member of Welga, as we know. So job well done, Doug, wherever you are.
Well said, Councillor Graham. He's probably listening online and waiting for all the accolades to be over before he comes in. And I notice Peter Newman in the gallery probably served with Councillor Thompson once upon a time. No? Way before Doug. Young men. I just wanted to say a few words as well to acknowledge Apace. Apace in North Fremantle turns 40 this weekend, which is pretty incredible. Measuring the impact of Apace over those years would be a difficult job to do, but to put it in context, 500,000 seedlings go out the gate every year. So that's a heck of a lot of seedlings. And probably when we talk about the urban forest plan later, we'll discuss what constitutes a tree. But they have to start somewhere. Very often, the important plants that we plant for wildlife, native verges, in our natural areas, in your garden at home, start out at Apace. So it'll be great to celebrate. They have an open day on Saturday for anyone who's free. And yeah, 40 years is quite an incredible achievement. And I think you think about the profile that native gardening and water-wise planting and all of that has now. The pioneering efforts of people like Anne Former 40 years ago, and you know some of the other people, Tony Freeman, Bob DeLuca, people who are still around, you know, should really inspire us as to think about what we might be doing today that in 40 years becomes very loved and mainstream and needed by everyone. So well done, Apace. Okay, that takes us to the end of elected member communication. So we'll go to the first item, which is the amended South Fremantle Heritage Area. Councillor Graham, Williamson, Wong and Sullivan will leave us. I'll go to the public gallery and we'll go through our speakers that we have here tonight. So starting with Christabel Chamarette. Or starting with Peter Newman. That's fine.
I was elected 50 years ago, so I was before Doug even, but I only lasted 4 years. But in that time, it was extraordinary to see the context of this item of heritage, that the first thing I did was help Les and Jerry McGill and others to get through a motion that stopped the as of right demolition of any house. As of right. No, didn't need to go to the council at all. And hundreds of houses were being knocked over every year. And we saved thousands of heritage houses in that act alone. Second thing I did was to go to David Carr, who was the planning commissioner at the time, and to try and get rezoning, because the whole of South Fremantle was industrial zone. And we were able to get, after a long period of lobbying, that every house that was left could be zoned housing and the rest could remain industry, and eventually, of course, it took over. But that was amazing to think that people are now saying that we don't have meaningful heritage activity in this town. Believe me, it's very meaningful to see what has happened since in terms of the enhancement of that heritage and the regeneration that's continuing. And certainly that is the basis of what we want to present, our group from St Paul's, because 50 years ago I started going to that church down the road in Beaconsfield and started restoring my 170-year-old cottage at the same time. And it was really about heritage as much as anything. And that heritage was very mixed up with the idea of our community values that we stood for. And it has been a delight to see the regeneration of so much of South Fremantle, and I totally support this heritage approach that's being taken at the moment of the next stage of getting that together. However, we in the St Paul's precinct, that's a 19th century precinct, which we have spent that past 50 years, and you'll hear more about it from the others, how that has been restored and regenerated and added to. And the additions are the interesting part, because they have been done in sync with the rest of the development. And what I circulated to all the councillors on the weekend was some pictures that show how this new development will enhance that heritage quality that is there, and it is now a community heritage as well. It is a jewel in that area, because the community uses it for so many things. There's a Islamic mosque as part of it. There's a Buddhist area there. And hundreds of groups that come in, and the music and so on. But all the buildings are well used now, and yet they are completely designed to enhance the heritage of the site. So the values of the community have lifted it up to the point where you can spend some money on it, a lot of money, like 5 million has been spent restoring that, because it's alive and working. And that is the basis of why we say that 166 ought to be part of that heritage and will be enhanced as part of that heritage if it is developed for 6 homeless abodes that will be designed to fit in with the rest of that precinct.
Peter, that is sort of
So
3
that's
minutes
my
and a bit.
context,
Yeah.
and it's all that I need to say at this stage.
Thanks, Peter. Christabel?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and also to Peter for preceding me very appropriately. I love Fremantle, and I totally support the unique heritage and preservation of Freo. However, inclusion of 166 in the South Fremantle Heritage Area proposal has presented a significant problem. Since 2002, following the purchase of 9 Macleary Street, which is the block behind St Paul's Anglican Church, Beaconsfield, and over the past 20 years, there has been a vision for a community housing development around the valuable St Paul's Anglican Church precinct. In 2007, 166 and 168 Hampton Road were purchased with the vision of becoming 5 strata blocks that could accommodate a vision that we had. In 2010, I bought 166 Hampton Road and moved in. I believed its history was that originally in the 20s and 30s, the blocks 166 and 168 had been the St Paul's Church tennis courts and had been gradually sold off one after the other when the church ran out of money. So I was absolutely delighted to buy 166 and move in, particularly because I had a desire to ensure that the driveway of 166 would increase the parking lot area for the St Paul's Church, because that was needed for the development of the East End Chapel and the amphitheatre and the meeting place components behind the church building, which had replaced the parking area. So I did it to be part of the community housing vision, along with others, which, despite the community housing being totally privately funded, it always included a low-cost accommodation component for people in need, refugees or homeless or people in transition. And so I had always intended to leave 166 in my will with the aim of it being available for the community housing vision. But with the help of Friends of St Paul's Beyond Inc. and other parishioners, I've made the decision just in the last couple of years to contribute it to the community vision now, before I die. So we have been planning the development of 166 as part of that community housing project for 20 years, and actually, there is a document here, and there's copies there. I'm sorry I made a noise spilling them, but it's the history of St Paul's, only going up to 2010, but it does document the community housing vision we had and the purchase of 166 and 168 to give it back to St Paul's rather than being tennis courts, and to continue the vision we had for it to provide the social and accommodation improvements that we felt made it essential that it wasn't simply a private housing development. So we've been planning that development for many years and submitted both the development plans and the request for demolition way ahead of the South Fremantle heritage issues arising. It's because of this, despite supporting the heritage aspects, that I'm appealing to the Council to exempt 166 from the current proposal and to let the development be considered on its own merits as part of the St Paul's Community Housing Development Project. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Butterworth? Or someone else?
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I'm a town planner assisting St Paul's Beyond Inc. and wish to speak in regard to the heritage listing of 166 Hampton Road, Beaconsfield. We have prepared and lodged a development application for demolition of the existing house at 166 Hampton Road and construction of a residential building referred to as Charis House, which is intended to provide housing for community members in need, as the previous speakers have outlined. Charis House is within the St Paul's Church precinct, and this precinct forms a very important community focus. The officer report recommends that the building at 166 Hampton Road be included in the heritage list as a level 3 building. Eddie Marcus, who we'll hear from in a moment, is an independent heritage consultant. He's inspected the property inside and out, and he is of the opinion that the building does not meet the threshold for inclusion on the city's heritage register. In relation to the proposed Charis House development, the independent heritage consultant, Eddie, forms the view that the state heritage listed building within the St Paul's Church Anglican precinct will remain unaffected both physically and visually by the construction of Charis House, preserving the immediate area's aesthetic and environmental value. And that was an important component of this application for Charis House, that it did respect the heritage significance of the church building. If Council resolves to include 166 Hampton Road on the heritage list, then we're very concerned that the application for demolition of the existing house and construction of Charis House will then not be approved. The listing of 166 Hampton Road would detract from the sympathetic completion of the church precinct, and it could then impact upon the important community use of the church precinct in providing low-cost accommodation. We request that Council consider the greater community benefit that the church precinct provides with the development of providing low-cost accommodation at Charis House compared to the community benefit of retention of the existing dwelling. Our request is in relation to the agenda item 15 in regard to the amended South Fremantle Heritage area, that we request modification to point 1 of the recommendation to add at the end of point 1, but exclude 166 Hampton Road, Beaconsfield from the heritage list on the basis that it is not considered to meet the threshold for inclusion on the city's heritage list. We note that there is an alternative recommendation to defer determination of 166 Hampton Road, and whilst we welcome this modification, it's the view of our independent heritage architect that the building at 166 Hampton Road does not meet the threshold for inclusion on the heritage list, and therefore we request that you consider excluding the property of 166 Hampton Road as part of this recommendation. Whilst that's our request and our primary position, if that's not supported by Council, then we support the amended recommendation put forward by Councillor Van Dawson. Thank you for your time, and we hope that you can consider this alternative recommendation.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
Eddie Marcus?
Good evening, Mayor, Councillors. You might remember me from such previous occasions as 2 weeks ago. I'm also speaking on 166 Hampton Road, and I want to know that Beaconsfield's always been a place of refuge. Its character was shaped as the centre for State Housing Commission developments there. It offered affordable homes to those in need. The proposal for 166 seeks to carry that legacy forward, not by preserving a modest post-war house of limited distinction, but by providing new housing for people who are increasingly priced out of the rental market. But regarding the heritage of the brick and tile currently on the site, at the OCM of 14th of May 2025, your manager of strategic planning was unambiguous to this meeting. They said that post-World War II housing would only be listed if it was part of a significant group or distinctive in its own right. 166 Hampton Road is neither of these things. It is not part of a coherent or uniform group of post-war housing, and its design is ordinary, lacking any distinctive architectural features or construction methods. It also holds no notable historical associations. The case put forward this week for a deferral also fails. The idea that it forms a pair with the very, very different 168 Hampton Road is association, not significance. Proximity does not create heritage. The so-called cohesive group in the area is overstated. The styles, periods, and levels of integrity vastly differ within the immediate area. The nearby church's heritage value stands independent of all residences. And pointing out that the street contains buildings from the 1890s to the 1950s is not proof of cohesion. It is proof of variety, a pattern replicated on almost every Fremantle street. And finally, claiming 166 demonstrates an evolution of heritage buildings is simply normal urban development. This house is neither rare nor exemplary and does not contribute to that narrative. Heritage protection is based on relevance, rarity, and integrity, not on age or some loosely defined context. By all of those measures, and by Council's own standards, 166 Hampton Road falls well short. Listing it would also come at a cost of blocking the continuation of Beaconsfield's proud tradition, proud heritage of adapting to meet the contemporary social needs. I respectfully urge Council to determine tonight that 166 Hampton Road does not meet the city's heritage listing criteria. Let us protect more than just some Beaconsfield building, but its commitment to housing those in need. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eddie. Roger Philpott.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. I'm a life member of the Fremantle Society, and I've survived 15 years as John Dowson's neighbour. I say these things because 15 months ago, a group of us, and I'm going to use we in future, we went to see a council heritage officer and planning officer about the nature of what could be built on this site that would not hinder or damage the church in terms of a heritage building. I emphasise what Christabel mentioned, is that for over 2 decades, we have been working on this wider precinct around the church. And I have been a party to the chapel and the amphitheatre and the kitchen and the developments that took place where the old tennis courts were. So we have always worked with council to try and put what is best for that site and that precinct. These hands have shifted bricks for the parking lot and selected every single marble tile for the chapel and cleared up the builder's rubble on the new site and removed the fallen ceilings in 166. I'm very intimately associated and with the proposal that's here. And to find that 166 is now going to be not able to be developed potentially is a great disappointment and shock, not only to me, but all those people in the past who've worked to make this precinct beautiful. And I use that word advisedly for those of you who visited and looked around. the gardens, the nature of the amphitheatre, the nature of the houses that have been built already, and the replacement house for 166 is going to fit into that pattern. So when you drive into the church, you will have a very large parking space made by the community efforts that's paved and serviceable in weather. If some of you remember the old parking space, it was sand and it wasn't very reliable in bad times. The idea of having low-cost accommodation is to, in some way, address known needs in our community. There are members of that church and that community who cannot afford their rents. And this is designed to try and help those people so they can stay in Fremantle or South Fremantle. So I urge you to reconsider your position on 166 and let us go forward with some improvements that are very sympathetic to the main heritage area, which is the church.
Thank you, Roger. The next speaker is Damien Lunt.
Good evening. I have a handout flyer that I'd like to request for distribution.
I believe we've maybe already got that one, and that will be distributed now.
Cool, thank you very much. I presented at the last council meeting and I'm back on the same topic. And the property in question is number 3 Trafford Street in Beaconsfield, and I refer you to page 4 and 5 of the additional documents for tonight's meeting. I'd like to start off by saying a thank you to Russell, Director of Planning, for a phone call during the week and a face-to-face conversation on this topic, which is appreciated. Unfortunately, we haven't had the desired outcome, so I'm back to plead my case before the council, similar to the previous speaker. And I spoke to Russell today to gauge whether it was worth coming tonight or whether the councils will be receptive to another 3 minutes of me speaking. I provided a handout of my property to help councillors understand what I'm talking through this evening. We objected to our property going on the Heritage Register during the public consultation period. The response back from council was brief. It was one sentence. It was objection not supported. The place is a good example of a masonry and tile house from the post-war period. My argument sits with 2 key aspects of that description. The definition of masonry is something that's built with brick or stone. There's not a single brick or stone on my property. The house is timber framed and no bricks or stone were used in the construction methods. The second aspect is a tiled roof. We have a approved development approval to re-roof the single story of our property and replace that old horrible tiles with Colorbond. The roof at the moment is half removed from the photos that you can see in front of you, and I've got tarps up to cover bits and pieces. Soon those red tiles, which are one of the key criteria of this description, will be fully removed and the house will no longer be any masonry or any tiles at all. Now, if 2 of the key criteria are not met with the council's statement, surely everyone can see that this is an omission, an error, or there are poor processes in place to accurately review an objection that a member of public has raised during a public consultation period. All I can see that's happened since the last council meeting is the council has updated the wording in their description on page 5. And they have updated the wording following me pointing out their errors. I would like the councillors to have a look at the photo for a moment. And I understand we're not all heritage experts in the room, but I would like to point out some key features of the property. The front porch is the item which the council is hanging a hat on to have heritage value. However, I don't believe there are any original photos of the house that the council hold to determine whether this porch was built originally or added on later. I would also like to point out that there's a difference between a style of housing, which the earlier speakers mentioned. So there's a difference between a style of house and adding heritage value to Fremantle. The council has not seen inside the house, so we are purely talking about the street aesthetics of the property. The pillars and the roof cover on the front porch are in very poor condition and they need to be pulled down. The steps up to the porch have subsided over the years And historically, there are a couple of palm trees planted either side, and they've uprooted the whole porch and the steps. So it's unsafe for my kids. If you look at the left of the southern side of the master bedroom is our dressing room, so the far left of the photo. The house was previously used as a psychology practice, and this was the main consultation room. It is not original, it's an add-on. You can tell by the roof line, and you can tell inside the house that the floor level steps down. The front wall covering the property is not original. I challenged the council to provide evidence of what the original walls look like, which I don't believe they can produce. Our plan is to weatherboard the house and make it look old and make it look a lot more appealing from the street. But with these changes, we're not going to be able to do this. Aluminium window frames weren't used when my house was built. The timber window frames and the original LED light and decorative glass panels have been moved many, many years ago. And I previously mentioned the roof changes which are happening as we speak, so the gutters and the roof will be replaced. Now, I'm very biased as I own the property, and I don't believe this house has any heritage value. I've spoken with an independent heritage consultant, Philip Griffins, and he's also agreed, but to formalise this is going to cost me about $1,000 to get them around my house. To progress this, I emailed the Council Heritage Department on the 15th of August, so that was 12 days ago, and I'm yet to receive a response. And what Philip needed to proceed was what is the place of record and what is the statement of significance of the property. I'm yet to receive a response from the council. Perhaps the council representative chose not to respond, to then not allow me adequate time to have an independent person review. I would also like to point out a few flaws in the council's approach to this. Across the road from me is number 6 Trafford Street, and it's home to the Italian neighbours on the street. Unfortunately, the wife passed away a few weeks ago, but the husband surviving is in his 90s. They immigrated here and have lived in Fremantle longer than anyone in this room. They lived in Trafford Street since they immigrated. They previously owned the house next door to me, and then they've moved across the road somewhere in the 50s and 60s. The 90-year-old Italian sister lives 2 doors down from me. The heritage assessment process doesn't include any discussions with the locals. I guarantee if you sit with the old Italians, they can tell you who moved into what house, when it was built, what family names they were, and they can tell you everything. My discussions with them about my property tells a very different picture that the council paints. And the fact that the council doesn't have original photographs of the property is a fair reason to remove my property and exclude it from the list. We would rather it be removed from the list until we have a definitive answer rather than include it on the register with misinformation. We shouldn't be making assumptions before we make decisions. To point out another obvious flaw.
We are somewhat over 3 minutes, Damien, so I might just get you to conclude if that's all right.
Of course. To point out one more flaw, the building across the road from me was built in 1928. My house was built in 1956. So there's about 30 years of difference. The house across the road was built 30 years before mine. The house is original. It's got character. It's beautiful inside. It's largely untouched. But because the old Italians across the road have not lodged any DAs with the council for the last few years, it doesn't get picked up in this process of the council. Their property is not listed on the Heritage Register, and I think this is completely bonkers because it defeats the purpose of the policy in the first place.
All right. Damien, what number of Trafford Street was the neighbours across the road? Might just check into that.
6.
6. Thank you. And we'll take on board what you've said. I would also encourage you to, if you can convince them, get the old Italian neighbours down to the local history centre, because it would be amazing to capture some of their memories of your street. All right, and I think the final person we have on this one is Mark Jones. Thank you, Mark.
Hello, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight. I've come to speak about my property, 16 Hickory Street, South Fremantle. The only thing I've got to say about it is thank you for seeing the reason there and bringing it back down to level 4. But something that wasn't included in the original mail out to me was that it could be put into inherit entry as an inherit entry. It was not previously an inherit entry, but it has now been made or recommended for an inherit entry. Now, it seems to me that most of the criteria for inherit entry have been answered by the Fremantle City Council's heritage team, and saying that it's a level 4 for record keeping only, and it will eventually disappear for something else to pop up, urban renewal. So my question for you, not question really, is what I'm asking is that you do not recommend it to inherit, as I can't see a point of it being there. It's never been picked up before, and not in many years. It's been there longer than all of us, and I'm sure it's gone through many surveys, heritage surveys, and it's never been brought in to inherit. There's 5 in that street, I think, that are listed in inherit. That's about it. Oh, I could say something else, seeing I've got a few more minutes. It's when you look at heritage, there's other things you're going to have to look to, not just remembering the past, but looking forward to look towards the people who will inhabit and live here afterwards. And two big problems. One is the energy efficiency of old houses. It's not very nice. The other one is, why do we have chimneys still using solid fuel heaters, which are really inaccurate, a really bad way of heating a house? You've got to work out somewhere with heritage issues of incorporating modern techniques into the houses for restoration and occupation, and maybe give people bonus points for it. I don't know, jelly beans, or $1,000 off their rates so they don't have to pay for the power.
Thanks, Mark. I think the other properties we're going to deal with probably in the debate, I might just get a comment on inherit listing and what the implications of that are for properties, just to clear that up now.
Yeah,
Thanks.
through the chair. I mean, inherit is just a record-keeping tool, and it's a state government managed one. It doesn't add any more statutory weight to the category that it's been listed at. In fact, it's actually just really important that it is an inherit, so there's a consistent record between the city and the state government regarding listings. So in that sense, I think the inherit component is actually a very important part of this consideration.
Thank you. All right, I believe everyone who is in the public gallery to say something has said something, which is good. So we'll go to the officer's recommendation. Do I have a mover for the officer's recommendation on this one? Councillor Archibald, and seconded by Councillor Thompson. Councillor Archibald, did you want to kick us off?
I'm happy to speak a little bit later, thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Thompson? All right. What I might do, if it's all right, is just ask for some officer clarification on something that I heard in the gallery. One of the things that was brought up was the sort of ability to put together independent heritage architect reports and submit them as part of this process. Am I right in thinking that with any future DA, those would be relevant considerations, and that would maybe be the appropriate time for a heritage architect to comment on a proposal?
Through the chair, Mayor, yes, indeed, any heritage reports prepared either internally or by external consultants would get considered as part of future DAs.
Thank you. Councillors, I know we have an amendment on the table, but does anyone have anything prior to going to that? Councillor Mofflin?
Yeah, I've just got a question in regards to the comments around 3 Trafford Street that we heard from the gallery, and particularly in regards to the development application that is from, if I understood correctly from the speaker, that they currently have approval for, and the implication of that in regards to the listing and how that fits together, if you like. And to add around that question of the materials of the house being timber framed as opposed to masonry, which the report still refers to.
Thank you. Director?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. We have been in discussion with Mr. Lunt over the last few days, and it's very much the case that it was a mistake in terms of the original listing referring to masonry, so we're very grateful for that pickup. We have since carried out a further heritage assessment, knowing that change, that it is a timber frame house that's had a cladding and then a render over the top. And the second point mentioned tonight was the replacement of tiles with corrugated metal roof. Although not ideal from a heritage point of view, it doesn't materially change some of the heritage values that have come through. So the recommendation back to council is to maintain that proposal to list.
Thank you. Can I ask just a further question on that one? Given we don't have anything on the agenda paper, if a councillor was of a mind to either suggest a change to a level 4 or delist that property, would that be possible tonight, or would it be more procedurally correct to do a deferral, much like the property considered last week, or discussed last week? Would it require any further assessment?
Further assessment for a deferral? Is it procedural?
So, I mean, I guess I'm just exploring the options that would be open to councillors tonight. One of them might be to change it to, or change the recommendation to level 4. Another one might be to defer for a year to allow the proponent to get further information and submit it.
Subject to governance confirmation, I would imagine we can, similar to Councillor Van Dawson's suggestion for a 1F for 166, you could add 3 Trafford.
Through the chair, that is correct. Mayor, if you would like to receive that as an amendment, that's perfectly fine.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Archibald?
That really solves... I'll wait now till that comes up.
All right. Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you. Just a further question on that. Could you please clarify, Russell, I was just a little confused. Does the gentleman is there a current DA in for assessment for 3 Trafford, or no? But there is approved works that are being undertaken now. So there was a recently approved DA, so you said that's flagged the property.
Mm.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, I can't ask.
You can't ask, yeah. Feel free to ask, Russell.
The approved DA, so clearly under construction. The gentleman did mention putting wood cladding. Is that part of the approved DA, or just new roofing and the addition at the rear? Oh, sorry, the previous DA. What's been approved? The wood. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think we know enough to answer the question.
I just want to clarify what's been approved, what this is going to look like at the end of it, and if there were any current data.
Unfortunately, Councillor, I cannot answer that question. I know it involves alterations at the back and re-roofing. I'm not sure if it includes recladding.
Thank you.
Thanks. Unfortunately, we can't engage with the gallery, but I think to the substance of the heritage question, it probably is, perhaps we can seek an answer on that, Russell, while we're discussing it.
Yep. Thank you. I'm happy. Oh, Ben.
Councillor Lorva?
Just a quick question in regards to 166, and it's about the potential DA that's in on that. Do we have any information about maybe the number and or types of dwellings that are being considered at that location, or is that not come to us for consideration yet?
I would be a little, okay. You can answer that. We do need to be a bit cautious that we don't confuse heritage decisions with DAs that may or may not be in front of the planning staff, but perhaps, Pat, you could give us a timeline-related comment if you have one.
Yeah, through the chair, I don't have the information around the current DA that's been lodged, but to just reiterate that point, that this is purely a heritage assessment, not one that takes into account the social benefit or community uplift, however valuable that could be. This is purely an assessment of the heritage fabric itself.
Councillor Van Dawson.
Thank you. I'd like to speak to the item and also foreshadow, I will be moving my amendment shortly, but I just did want to thank, I wasn't at the meeting 2 weeks ago, so I didn't get to hear what everyone said about it, or it's the first time I've had opportunity to have a good look at this item. I do want to thank the officers for their reporting and approach to heritage. I do always welcome reviews of heritage areas, and identifying specific properties I think is important. I think it helps with our decision making, and yeah, because the heritage area and then every DA sort of has to be looked at. I think it's great to sort of really acknowledge and recognise which properties potentially have more significance than others. But on that, there was, just a couple that have come to our attention this week and tonight as well. And I would like to move my amendment, which was to point 1 and F, and that is to defer the determination of 166 Hampton Road as detailed in attachment 2.
That's Councillor Mofflin seconding.
Thank you. I'll just speak to that a little. So the reason for my defer, and I'd also potentially just flagging potentially a further amendment to add 3 Trafford in a similar light, if I can. No, okay. I'll just talk to this one first. Apologies, I'm new to moving amendments. So procedurally, but the reasons was there has been additional information come to light with this particular property, and I would like more time to sort of look at that and really understand more about the heritage values of this site. So it's really interesting in heritage assessment. So we have our officers, it's very subjective, and you see it, at almost every DA where heritage is involved. We've sort of got officers on one side, and then we have heritage experts on the other. It is subjective, and so, both support and applicants, you can get you get different views on heritage from everyone. So I think, but generally I would defer to the experts and what they have to say, and certainly our officers are excellent, and I do have a lot of respect for their assessment and consideration of heritage. But in terms of what's proposed tonight, so thank you to our speakers, and thank you for your time this week. I met with the owner there just to discuss their concerns and also the proposal for the site, which has not been considered tonight, but and appreciate your request for a further amendment to have it removed or exempt from the list. Personally, I'm not comfortable to move that motion or that amendment or to exempt the property, because I will refer to, I'm not a heritage expert, and but my personal view is I do like that style of architecture. I do think it contributes to the heritage values of the streetscape personally. However, the reason I would like this to be deferred is very much around just from a planning decision-making perspective, and not having all the information. I just would like more time to consider. I think council should take more time to consider. But the key issue is really around where we have a development application in for assessment, and the people speaking tonight have spoke about the many years that have gone into planning for this. So an application that's been through the design development, the development application process, it's been submitted, they've had feedback from heritage officers, from everyone, and everyone's working in good faith towards a determination of an application. Personally, as a planner, I don't feel it's fair to move the goalposts on an applicant while a DA is in assessment. And I think I am aware of times it's been done. I understand that's the planning framework and how it works, but I sort of feel like we should work in good faith with the community and just work with their application that they've submitted and assess their application based on its merits and in the current framework. I just personally have a bit of a concern about moving goalposts on owners and applicants in terms of what's considered an assessment when they've taken many, many years preparing something and working, with a vision for the site. Also, not to say if it was obviously, if my amendment's not supported and is included on the list, it doesn't prevent us. The DA will be considered separately, but it can have a significant impact on that decision. But on its own, I just don't feel that the officer's recommendations for this property and just all the heritage considerations and significance of it, it's just proposed for a level 3. I just don't think, I don't think it's warranted. And I'd like to just give the owners the opportunity to see through their application and then come back at our next heritage review and look at the property again and see where we're at. So I hope councillors will support that amendment. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Van Dawson. Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, just ask if Councillor Van Dawson would consider adding 3 Trafford Street as a friendly amendment to your amendment, so we could vote on both at once.
Can I suggest that we maybe add that as, just in terms of speaking, we're going to start confusing 2 different properties, whereas I'd be very happy to accept an amendment on its own for 3 Trafford. If that's just procedurally, I think that's going to be easier, if that's okay. Councillors, so on 166 Hampton Road. Councillor Archibald, sorry, Councillor Lorber.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Councillor Van Dawson for bringing this forward. You know, whenever I hear about folks wanting to provide housing for those most in need, I kind of, you know, get really giddy and happy, and I'm excited to potentially see that proposal. And I agree furiously with your comments that if this has been that long in the making, we should really let that application or that proposal come to us as the framework was when it was put to us. So I think a deferral is entirely appropriate on this one, and if an amendment is supported for the 3 Trafford, I would also support that as well. So thank you for bringing this forward, Councillor Van Dawson, and I look forward to supporting it.
Thanks. Councillor Archibald?
I'll just be brief because my colleagues have said some of the things that I might have said if I'd got in earlier, but I do think that this one is a really delicate balance between, you know, the heritage of the house, which is post-war, and the heritage of the church and its precinct. But that, to me, also includes social heritage to a large extent as well, given the long-term vision of the church and the implementation of a great many of those things on the way through since 2010 and perhaps even before. So I very much support the deferral of this. The deferral of a year gives the council, given that the DA is already submitted, the DA can be assessed and you know, we can deal with it in that way, and then we'll see what happens after that. But so I do fully support what Councillor Van Dawson has put forward, and I hope my colleagues will support it too. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Kamada?
Yeah, thank you. I'd just like to reiterate what my fellow councillors have already stated. I think that's what this process is all about. Officers have done some very important work and obviously taken a lot of time, and the community has an opportunity to assess and respond. And I think this deferral gives us, as a council, an opportunity to make the best decision possible with further information available. And personally, I feel that both 166, I know we're talking about that specifically, but also 3 Trafford have made strong cases that deserve strong consideration, so I support this deferral.
Thanks, Councillor Kamada. I might speak to the deferral, but this would probably be my remarks more generally. I do support deferring the determination of 166 Hampton Road because one of 2 things will happen, and in both cases you have the opportunity to put forward your heritage expertise in that scenario. Either we will be looking at a DA, which will, you know, regardless of whether this is listed at this point or not, you're in the South Fremantle Heritage Area, so heritage will be a consideration in a DA, and you'll submit information and we will look at it as a council as part of a DA process. Or we'll be here in a year's time looking at information that you have provided from your independent experts on this property and the listing. So my reasons for supporting the deferral are the reasons of more information that can be provided about the property. And the people in the public gallery have spoken to that tonight. Just more broadly, and you know, so I don't necessarily have to speak again on this. This was a piece of work that was initiated, and I know Councillor Archibald was deeply involved in initiating this. Councillor Pemberton, when she was on council, a couple of other councillors, Councillor Waltham, because we kept getting things coming to us at planning, and then there would be almost a heritage blindside. We'd go and have a good look at a property and say, actually, your property has heritage, after people had gone down a significant pathway with the DA. And that didn't feel fair. So what this process is trying to be very clear about which properties have heritage significance and to what level, so that it's transparent for everyone all the way through. So instead of those kind of repeated blindsides that were happening to individuals, in a sense, when they were coming in for a DA, some of you have been caught up in almost a reverse blindside, which is that we have now gone through and assessed a whole lot of heritage, and it just so happens that you have development plans in that context. But the piece of work itself is really important, because it means that people can have clarity when they purchase a property or when they start planning towards a DA for a property about where it stands in terms of heritage. So, good piece of work. It will inevitably catch up a few people who are in the middle of a DA situation in that work being done. So, we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We just have to deal with a few kind of, mucky bits on the way through. So I will support the deferral, and those are the reasons. Much as I love the development application, to me it's not relevant at all to this decision. It's a different decision we'll make at a different time. Councillor Van Dawson, did you want to close?
I think I've said everything, so yeah, no, happy to go to a vote. Thank you.
All right, so I'll put that one to a vote. All those in favour? And against? Councillor Thompson against, so that's carried. Councillor Lorver, you wanted to move something, I think, in relation to 3 Trafford Street. I guess the options we outlined before were defer or potentially level 4.
I just think a deferral on that one as well, just to give the person time to prepare the report and give us the more information would be wonderful. Same with the other one. Thank you. If it has a seconder.
I'll grab a seconder, that's up on the screen. Councillor Kamada. Thanks. Councillors on that one? Councillor Van Dawson?
Yeah, I'm happy just to speak briefly to that. So thank you for coming tonight. And again, I wasn't at the last meeting, so I didn't hear you speak then. So this was actually all new to me tonight. But I just think there's just a few things here. There was an error in the officer's report, which has been amended, and the owner has suggested that he'd like to potentially engage a heritage expert to get his to get their views on the development, so providing us with, or on the property, sorry, more information to be considered. And also that it's undergoing works at the moment, so we're not really seeing what it's going to be. So I'd sort of, just in light of all those 3 things, I'd support deferral. We'll have a finished development next year. We'll have potentially more information from the applicant, and yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Van Dawson. Councillor Archibald.
Thank you. I likewise support the deferral of this, particularly given that the DA has already been approved and the work is underway. And perhaps what could be done during the next 12 months is, with the completion of all those works, does the house still have heritage value and it won't interfere with the future of the site in terms of the current owners? That can be assessed separately. So I think it's a great... it's a very positive thing to defer this for 12 months.
Thanks, Councillor Archibald. Councillor Moughlin?
Yeah, I too support the deferral, and for the reason that the property is midstream work, and yeah, I think it should be assessed after that to understand whether it still maintains that heritage value.
Yeah, I'll vote for this. I guess I was partly of a mind that if the works are underway at the moment to renovate the house, and to go and have to get a heritage consultant for a single property, doing a single, doing something that they're pretty much finished, I don't know, it didn't feel like a great thing to me. So I was potentially more open to the idea of making it level 4, just record only. But likewise, it may be that he gets the same place in 12 months' time with this this deferral of determination. So, all right. If there's no further speakers, I will put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And against, and Councillor Thompson against, and that's carried. All right, back to the item as now amended twice. So to be clear to those whose properties we've just spoken about, in 12 months' time, there's an annual heritage review that happens as a matter of course. That will cause our officers to relook at those properties in their whatever state of completion or otherwise they're in. Obviously, if there's a DA process in the meantime, that will precipitate a different conversation. All right, councillors on the item, otherwise I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Thank you. And we'll bring the other councillors back into the room. All right. So the next item we'll go to is the MRS amendment for North Fremantle. Just let people get back in their seats. Okay. Welcome back. So we'll go to North Fremantle. Do we have a mover for the MRS amendment for North Fremantle? Councillor Van Dawson, and a seconder, Councillor Thompson. Would you like to open us up on debate?
I'll actually, happy to open. So thank you, officers, for their assessment of this one. And I do understand there's an alternate motion being put forward by Councillor Sullivan this evening, which I do appreciate. I do support the officer's recommendation and 100% agree. I do strongly object to the urban deferred being lifted at this stage, just given the lack of certainty around the coastal reserve and also our integrated transport strategy, which is being prepared. And I do thank the gentleman from Row Group coming tonight to speak on for the applicant. I do really appreciate you coming, because often with the sort of state government applications, the applicants don't always come to council. So I really appreciate hearing your views. However, just disagree with you. I feel quite strongly that it's too early to lift, given the uncertainty in the planning framework at the moment, and there are some really major considerations and things that are under review, such as the transport strategy too, the coast and the transport connections that are going through there, and they will have potentially significant impacts on North Fremantle. And I believe the structure plan, I'm sure you've got one and it's ready to go probably for when this is inevitably lifted. However, I don't think one should be prepared until we have some certainty around that framework for the planning framework for that area. Like, there's sort of key things. I do appreciate when a structure plan comes, we can look at coastal setbacks and, where the roads are going to go and that sort of thing. But for us, we want more certainty around, and from the state government, we've been asking for that information. We've got main roads with planning control areas and road reserves. We don't know, and there's the future of Fremantle, and there's major, and then of course the coastal. That I'll let Councillor Sullivan speak more to that. But thank you for coming tonight. I do appreciate, but disagree with you that we can lift. Oh, apologies. Sorry. But yes, thank you. I do. Look forward to hearing everyone else speak on this item.
Thanks, Councillor Van Dawson. Councillor Williamson-Wong.
Thanks. I'll be brief on the item that we have before us right now. In that, I echo Councillor Van Dawson's comments. I think two things. Well, the main thing is that there just isn't enough information in front of us, and the idea that going from an urban deferred zone to an urban zone is just an easy switch and it's pretty much the same is not how I understand the planning system to work. There are clear things that need to be considered when you are applying for that change in zone, and those things are the information that's lacking at the moment. And I wanted to, point specifically to Paul Gamblin and what he raised around the climate mapping, specifically in the foreshore erosion mapping, because we know from the Future of Fremantle planning process that wasn't adequate, and it's pretty dubious, this idea that the reserve as it stands is going to sustain the level of erosion and climate impacts we're going to see over the next 100 years. And if it is exactly to the CHAR mapping as it stands, then there'll be 23 or 24 metres between the reserve and a building, which seems crazy if you wanted to step that out in terms of foundations, all of these things. So I guess for me, I am most concerned about the CHAR mapping as well as the other things, but obviously the CHAR mapping will be my main concern. I think that, it's not at the point where we can advise or support a change in zoning, because once we do the change in zoning, it kind of spirals out of control from there. And while I understand that a precinct plan comes after this, precinct plans are then based on the zoning as it's been approved, and there is a system in place for when you're trying to change a zone from an urban deferred to an urban, and so why we would throw that out the window because we think it's just the same, it doesn't make sense to me. And I guess my planning hat is also a bit concerned because I just don't think that we should ever suggest or recommend an approval of something when there is so much information that's not known, and that's just generally a no-go in planning approvals. So I definitely wouldn't want to do that on this item, but look forward to comments from here.
All right, now just a couple of things. So to clarify, I am happy to take Councillor Sullivan's input as an amendment rather than an alternative motion, given it has the same intent, I believe, as the officer recommendation, and it's just phrased in a different way. So rather than that being an alternative motion, I'm happy for that to be an amendment to the officer's recommendation. I did just maybe want to get a comment before we go to Councillor Sullivan on the issues raised by the Rowe Group in terms of the reporting of the process in the officer's report. In the officer's report. So I can recap, or I think you probably picked up on the issue raised there.
Through the chair, I can provide comment on that. So unfortunately, in the very first communications we had from DPLH and the referral of the applicant's materials to the city, it was very clearly stated that preliminary comment was being sought. That, as it turned out, was misinformed in the communication provided by DPLH. That shouldn't have been interpreted by us as just providing preliminary comment subsequent to further opportunity to provide comment through a WAPC assessment process. What was said before by a Rowe Group representative is correct as far as this being the principal opportunity to provide comment to the WAPC. When the WAPC hears this item, they can decide on that item in that session, and there won't be advertising opportunity after that or at that point. So unfortunately, that was only communicated today by DPLH.
And while we're talking about this, the deadline for the submission of our comments to this is when?
We've received, through the chair, we've received an extension of time to bring this item to council. I'm aware that the intent is for the WAPC to meet before the end of the year on this item, likelihood being at a meeting towards the end of November. That would give a small window, therefore, for the council to provide comment that could be material to that decision.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, can I just ask a question on that exact conversation? Are you saying that the Planning Commission could lift the urban deferred and create it as urban as soon as the November meeting, that they don't have to do a scheme amendment process with advertising and the like?
Through the chair, that's correct, because the view would be that this is supplementary to the original MRS amendment from 2024, MRS 1441. So this is a supplementary process to that, yes.
And just to be clear, the documents that we have been provided are confidential, but they weren't provided in the same way at the time of the original amendment, so the public don't get to see those?
That would seem to be the case and beyond the control of the city and staff, yes.
And does the state government have a policy on transparency?
I'll take that as rhetorical. Councillor Lorver?
Sorry, I had my
Okay,
thing first,
sorry, I
so-
wasn't sure whether we were in questions or amendments. Did you want to carry on with questions, Councillor Lorver? We might just deal with Councillor Lorver's question and I'll come back to you, Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just, when we supported the urban deferred several years ago, there were issues that, prompted that decision not to go urban right away, and the issues that are largely still remain. So would the WAPC take a look at the reason for the deferral and saying, we're not ready to grant urban because X, Y, and Z, which is transport and other foreshore and all those things, into consideration? Or is that something that we need to highlight back to them, saying the reason for the deferral were these big things that we wanted addressed and they're still not addressed?
Through the chair, that's correct, and that's why the report is structured very clearly around the 4 criteria that WAPC set in that decision from 2024. So they are to await the finalisation of the future of Fremantle, to confirm the transport needs around this particular precinct. There is also a criterion regarding requirements of the Foreshore Reserve, and there was also a criterion regarding the implications with regard to the buffer zone of the port. So that's why the report has been structured in that way. They're the criteria that the WAPC will consider this lifting request when it's heard later this year.
All right, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. I would just like to speak generally on the item first, and then I'll move the amendments that are in the additional documents. What we've just been told is I guess quite alarming to me. It seems that the notion of ending up with an urban deferred should be like any other zoning. It should be a stepped process to go from urban deferred to urban. I would have thought that required some sort of public consultation at the very least, perhaps not to the same extent as a rezoning from industrial to urban, but particularly where you're reliant on additional information, and you're also reliant on the fact that there's a lot of new information on the table, because things like future of Fremantle hadn't even really begun when the urban deferred process was put to the community and the Planning Commission. So it does, I'm very concerned, and I think maybe the wording of our recommendation, or at least the letter, should highlight that concern back to DPLH and to the Planning Commission, and indeed the Minister and local member. I don't agree that you can go from an industrial zoning to an urban zoning and not deal with the state coastal planning policy at the same time. My understanding has always been that state policies are to be implemented or at the first possible stage of planning. And so if we're looking at a rezoning of an area, there should be a high level of consistency between the new zones that are created and what the requirements of the state coastal planning policy and other state policies are requiring. And the idea or the notion that that line, that new line for a foreshore reserve, just happens to coincide with the edge of the eastern boundary of the old rail reserve that existed before, is hardly likely to be the outcome of a good coastal planning process. And indeed, the reality is at this stage, we should be determining what the long-term recreational assets for Port Beach and that area are, not just assessing everything on the basis of, well, that's what's there now, that's all we need, well, that's all the future community needs, because we know that area is completely and utterly underserviced and inadequate. I mean, it's 100% virtually hard stand. What foreshore reserve is 100% concrete? Scarborough isn't, Cottesloe isn't, Leighton isn't. I don't know of any regional beach node that it's 100% concrete or bitumen. So there are already obviously things which that need to be in the bucket of recreational assets that should go along with a foreshore reserve. And if those haven't been assessed, if the spatial requirements, the area needed for all of those types of things haven't been assessed and haven't been calculated, we don't know the area that's needed, then how can anyone possibly say that in 100 years' time there'll still be enough reserve width to accommodate the assets? Because all they're saying is they're going to accommodate the assets that are there, which we know to be fundamentally inadequate. So this process of saying, we might be able to tweak the foreshore reserve at the next phase of planning is not appropriate. It's also not appropriate to go from an industrial zoning to an urban zoning and for the state not to impose its right to zone some of that land as parks and recreation. If it doesn't do it at that first stage, then the land will be going from urban to parks and recreation, and obviously the compensation, if there is any, would have to be significantly more than if it was going from industrial land to parks and recreation. So it just seems illogical that we're not dealing with that at this stage. So as I said, I mean, my understanding is the state coastal planning policy and other state planning policies require these matters to be dealt with at the first stage of planning, and this is the first stage of planning. The policy basically says new or amended regional or local planning schemes should be consistent with the objectives, policy and guidelines contained in this policy. And we're not seeing that. So there is that's why it was one of the 4 matters that needed to be dealt with. So I'm very, very concerned about that. It's probably best if I go to the amendment, but I would say that I know some councillors are concerned about, well, have we realistically had sufficient time and opportunity to consider the significant volume of documents that were delivered to us on Wednesday night, and which were so large that many people couldn't actually open them. So, some people have only really had an opportunity to really look at them in a much shorter period of time. But even still, given our agenda, I appreciate that, many of us probably feel like we should be spending more time on this. But having said that, and particularly given the matters that have just been advised to us, if the Planning Commission is potentially going to make a final decision about this in November, we need to be getting our concerns in front of the DPLH officers as strongly and as early as possible so that they can take them into account properly when they write the report. And it may well be that we want to deal with this by giving them this initial suite of comments and come back later and actually give ourselves an opportunity to have another crack at it as well. Because there are things which aren't in the report. For example, we've been through a process with the community looking at the city plan and looking at the North Fremantle version of the city plan where we've been asking the community, and they've been saying things which are very consistent to what I've got in my amendment about those areas. And so we haven't even got to the point where we've got that summation from the community into this process. So there may well be, rather than deferring the whole thing, if councillors are concerned, there might be a sort of a tweaking of the amendment that the Mayor might allow, where it basically does submit this as the first tranche of information and gives us an opportunity to come back and have another look at it. So I'll leave perhaps that thought with the Mayor to give that some thought. I will move to my amendments. I'm not sure if the staff have the original version that's got the green in. Yes, you have. That's excellent. Essentially, what's in the additional documents is in the black and white version is what is proposed. It doesn't change the officer's recommendation 1 and 2A and B that much. It does include under B, though, I guess a lot more detail as to what B might mean. But I don't think it significantly changes the officer's intent in that part of the recommendation. The part 3 that's added really is, I guess, trying to capture as much of the concerns that I know I have and others have about what's needed for the coastal planning to be done well, and also what is needed as part of the transport assessment and studies that need to occur. So what I'm really concerned on that side is that... Oh, sorry. Yeah. Do you want to second it?
Yeah, I mean, before you speak to it, I've also just asked officers to try and capture the sentiment you expressed previously about our concern that the urban defer could be lifted without transparent community consultation. I'm just wondering if you want to include that in your amendment.
Yeah,
it's a part 4 at the moment, so close enough, good enough. Otherwise, we can deal with it separately. I'm happy either way. I just thought we might be more efficient.
Happy to include that. I just wondered whether there was anything that, whether you wanted to sort of have it as this as an initial tranche of stuff as well. So
we could pop it up to number 1 or 2.
Something in number 1, just tweaking the very first part.
And we probably want to say the Minister for Planning as well. Cool. All right, and Councillor Williamson Wong, you were keen to second it, I think.
Yeah.
All right, so if you want to open on the amendment, and then we'll go.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I won't go through every one of these dot points because they're very extensive. They really are, particularly the coastal ones. I think I've already spoken to the transport movement corridor. It really concerns me that for decades we've been saying that we want greater connectivity, east-west connectivity, particularly between places like the North Fremantle Town Centre and the foreshore, and between the town centre and the other parts of Fremantle. We are absolutely, as a community, fed up with the disconnect, the fragmentation of the North Fremantle Peninsula. And we certainly don't want to see that continue. And the great concern is that we have this triangle of land between the private owner's development site and the rest of North Fremantle. And it's skinny at the northern end and it's quite fat at the southern end. And it's basically there being held for possible transport options. If we don't know what those transport options are going to be, that chunk of land just sits there as kind of like no man's land. And it's almost impossible for it not to be land that creates planning blight. Development will always look at that land and go, we don't know what's happening in that land. We'll just turn our backs to it. And that's effectively how you fragment an area. It's effectively how you make sure that we'll have permanent fragmentation of these urban cells and that they won't be meaningfully connected back into the community. And sure, you know, you might get an underpass under the railway line and under Curtin Avenue. We all know how, you know, terrific they are. If that's the only level of sort of connectivity, then it's a fail from day one. It needs to be an urban integrated outcome. And we need to convince the state government that the transport movement corridors through that area can't be the sort of standard main roads template. They have to be roads that allow for urban integration. And so if we don't start with that premise and we don't look at that triangle of land, the developer can say whatever they like about that, you know, they can develop their bit of land without worrying about what's happening to this triangle of land, that they'll always be able to find a way to you know, get off the main road and into their development. That's not the criteria. You know, that's a disaster waiting to happen. We absolutely have to know, you know, whether the railway is going to go up or going to go down, or, you know, how are we going to get these east-west connectivity. The other thing is that it's all very well to say that, you know, the process of the future Fremantle is kind of there now. It's an approved document. The state's signed off on it. But we know what happened with the bridge process, and we know what happened with the future of Fremantle process, is that both of those processes said, we don't really want to deal with the regional transport network issues, because that's a whole nother exercise in itself. So none of those processes have actually dealt with the very matters that are going to be critical as they go through the middle of or between this development site and the rest of North Fremantle. So, you know, we're getting this, you know, kind of like going round in circles, not resolving the problem. And we're now at a stage where a development wants to be zoned urban and start doing their detailed planning for how development will be rolled out, and we won't be any closer to having some clarity about how we're going to integrate one side and the other side. And so for those two reasons, critical reasons, it is premature. We have to, you know, say to the state, you cannot go ahead until you've really got those two matters resolved. And we need to, you know, I have sympathy for the developers, because I know they want to get on with things, and, you know, we have a housing crisis and all that, and that'll get used as, that's why you just have to release the land. But we can't have a situation where we, you know, allow those criteria to override good planning, particularly where that planning is defined quite clearly in the highest level of planning documents in the state planning policy, and was actually the criteria that was set when the urban deferred was created. So, you know, really all we're saying back to the Planning Commission is, you guys set the criteria. These are the things that you need to fix, you need to resolve, you need to have dealt with a sufficient degree of clarity that we can move forward. Get on and do the exercise so that we can collectively come together as a community and support development and actually see that land develop. But it's premature to do it until those two really critical matters are resolved. So I hope you support the recommendation.
Councillor Sullivan, we might just bring up on the screen, there's been a couple of things mentioned, bringing further up the disappointment, I guess, with the lack of public transparent consultation, and also that this may be initial feedback. So we'll just bring that up on the screen, and then I'll go to other councillors. I just want to confirm that we're all happy with the drafting of the amendment. So if we can pop that up on the screen, that'd be great. Just probably in one, we need to say part 3 and 4, because we've got 2 twos. But apart from the numbering, are you comfortable with that in its current drafting? And with the seconder?
Might have some additional words, so I might just hand
All
to
right,
her.
we'll go to the seconder then.
I might bring my wording to Mel if that's easiest, but I guess my worry is the drafting as it stands. I feel like we could be encouraging the WAPC to be allowing community consultation from here rather than just saying, you haven't done this thing and telling them off. I feel like that's not going to go down that well. Rather, we could just note that we don't think it's been sufficient thus far and encourage them to change it. I'll give my wording to Mel so that we can get it on the screen.
All right, so I'll go to Councillor Lorver, who I think wanted to speak on the amendment, and then we'll come back.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very, very, very important item. I just want to also thank the mayor for allowing us to consider this as amendments instead of the alternate recommendation. That was really, really kind. I think the best way forward on this thing. You know, I really don't know if there had addressed our concerns in the 2,000 and some odd pages that were supplied in the confidential documents, but I didn't notice that they had addressed them in there. So I'm convinced that we need to work with the system we have, and I'm convinced by the comments that we need to get something to the WAPC sooner rather than later. And so trust the staff, trust Councillor Sullivan and his long history of dealing with issues in this area, and I will be supporting this amendment, and then I'll be supporting the recommendation as amended if we get to that point. So I just wanted to thank Councillor Sullivan for all the work that he's put into this, because it is quite lengthy, and I did take the time to read through all of it, and I think there's quite a bit of good commentary in there that would be very valuable for the WAPC to have when they first start considering this. So thank you.
Given we're still drafting, maybe I'll speak on the amendment and why I'll support it. We'll know the work is done that we have required to be done prior to the urban deferred zoning being listed when we have a clear plan for the roads through North Fremantle and a clear idea about how the Foreshore Reserve can function in 100 years' time to provide sufficient space for people, parking, surf life-saving, all the other things that happen in a foreshore reserve. When we know that, then it's time to lift the urban deferred zoning, and until that time, it's not time. So my view on it is pretty simple. We know there's work now happening by Department of Transport to look at the transport solutions for the area. That's great. It's long overdue. We've done a lot of work to engage with the community on what they want to see in North Fremantle. That needs to be taken into consideration here. The thing that's clear about North Fremantle that Councillor Sullivan's articulated well, there is not an abundance of space in North Fremantle to solve these kind of problems. And it was highlighted with things like the PSP connection, where simply it was too tight to be able to get a sensible PSP connection through there. So until we see clear plans that show us how Curtin Avenue is going to be extended and connected, where a PSP is going to go in the future, and what a foreshore reserve that accommodates future demand and Perth with a growing population, remembering we don't get more beaches as we increase urban sprawl to the east. It's not time, and I won't support the lifting of urban deferred until those things are absolutely set in stone. Councillor Thompson.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. It really is just a procedural thing. Really, we've got one amendment, which is Councillor Sullivan's. We should deal with that first before we deal with the second amendment.
I think the second amendment was based on the words that Councillor Sullivan used in response to new information that came up. So I'm comfortable with it. Sorry. I understand. Yep. So I'm happy to include it all as one. Okay. Councillor Van Dawson on the amendment.
Thank you. Just on the amendment, I just wanted to speak briefly just to thank Councillor Sullivan for all his work on this. Really appreciate and fully support the amendment, and second the comments that have been made also by the Mayor tonight. So thank you very much.
All right. Any further speakers on the amendment? I'm just confirming that the mover and seconder are both now Comfortable with the wording? Excellent. All right, we'll put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. And back to the item as now amended. Any further speakers? We look like we're all good. So I think just to be clear procedurally, at this point, were there further detailed matters that we wanted to bring back? That would come back to a council meeting on the 24th of September, or would that be done at an officer level? No, so obviously point 1 refers to with further detailed response to be provided following further consideration of the matters listed in parts 3 and 4. What would be the mechanism for that further detailed response to be provided?
Through the chair. We could go away and put together a session to discuss all of those matters with elected members and bring back something after the election, but not before, is what we're saying.
All right, fair enough, and we don't have a time frame in there, so that's permissible, I suppose, in the current situation. And it may be that we look at this and think this is a sufficient response at some point in time as well. Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that and make sure there were no further words that we wanted to add into there. Look, I'm open to it not coming back. I think Council's view is made fairly clear through these comments tonight. So I suppose it's just the purpose of having that in there, as I understood it, was if there is further sort of information we want to provide, and I know Councillor Sullivan referred to the work that's being done through the North Fremantle City Plan, that is able to be submitted as further information.
Through the chair, to be very clear that you would like it to come back to council, perhaps we would add some words to say that it would be brought back to council before we actually submit it.
Councillor Sullivan, what was your intention?
The point is to submit this bit as soon as possible, obviously. I think the point of the bit in highlight is, you know, that we, I guess, reserve, we should probably change the words, but that amendment's gone through. But we, you know, reserve the right to put more information in later. So I don't know if someone wants to amend the amended version, so that it's clear that the officers are putting this bit in now, and if in the clear light of day there is additional stuff, we might send other stuff through, whether the officers generate that or it's generated by elected members, probably doesn't matter. Staff might go away and actually go, oh, right, this is our last bite of the cherry. We'd like to say more, in which case they will generate a report back to us, or elected members might come in with a notice of motion. So it's really just reserving that opportunity so that...
Yeah, okay. I've got the seconder listed to speak, but was that on clarifying? Yeah, did you want to do that, given...
Thanks.
I think some
question. I understand I've already spoken. I agree with much of what Councillor Sullivan has said, in the sense that I think we need to submit this if there's a deadline, and WAPC staff need this in front of them so that they can consider that before the meeting, if that is November. However, I agree we can reserve the right to submit something later. Okay. The question bit is, as I understand it, there's not necessarily anything to say if we submitted to WAPC in 2 weeks or in a month or in 6 weeks, they would have to refuse to look at it. Equally, I don't think there's a policy that says they should read it, but it's not a good look for WAPC if they don't take it into consideration. So does staff know if there are any policies that would stop us submitting something at a later date?
Could I have a point of order, Madam Chair? Councillor Sullivan has actually already closed the debate on this amendment. So all of the past comments are irrelevant because the debate has actually been closed. So we should either vote on it, and if somebody wants to move a further amendment, then we can go to that. But Councillor Sullivan has closed debate.
We've voted on the amendment, so we're back on the substantive item as amended. I'm considering whether we want a further amendment to clarify this point. I guess where I'm beginning to land on this is reserving the right. Sounds like a better way of going forward, which just makes it clear that should we as elected members or officers want to come back with more information, we reserve the right to do so, regardless of whether there's a policy or not, in a sense, that we make our intention clear with that. So if we go to that, is somebody happy to second that as an amendment to the item as amended? Yeah, Councillor Lorber? Yeah. And just to get it clear grammatically, nope, don't go that far, please. Reserve the right to provide further detailed response to the matters listed in part 3 and 4. To the matters listed in part 3 and 4. Are you happy with that as the seconder, Councillor Lorber? Yep. Okay. On the amendment to the item, is there any discussion? All right, I'll put that amendment to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. So back to the item as amended further. Are we ready to go to a vote on that? Yep. All right, all those in favour? And that's also unanimous. Thank you. That was procedurally complicated, but we got there in the end. All right, I'm going to go back to the agenda order now, if everyone's comfortable with that. I may just check. There's a few here I'm not entirely sure whether people have a desire to speak on. I want to speak on a couple, so I'll pull those ones out. But does anyone wish to speak on 17, 21? 21, the commercial plan, yep. 23, the lease in North Fremantle. Does anyone wish to speak on that? Yep. Okay, well, at this stage, we're just going to go with the agenda order for a while. Just checking, never know. All right, let's go to the city plan. Do we have a mover for the item 16, the city plan, city centre? Councillor Van Dawson as chair, and second of that one, Councillor Archibald. Put your hands up higher, I can't see that far away. All right, Councillor Van Dawson, if you want to open.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and very happy to move this one. Thank you, officers and everyone involved to putting this together. I think it's a fantastic piece of work. It's taken a while and a lot of community consultation. I'm really happy with the outcome that we're considering tonight, and hopefully we've got everyone's support to adopt this new document. I just wanted to briefly address, we did have a speaker tonight talking about heritage, and I just thought I'd address that briefly, but I do think that heritage is certainly in this document, and it isn't a heritage document, it's our city plan, so a future strategic planning document that considers everything, and certainly heritage is in there, and we certainly have a framework for considering heritage in our statutory framework when development applications do come up, and this document, being strategic, hopes to guide and encourage new development in the city, and we want more people living here and a better and more beautiful city for everyone to enjoy. So I'm really pleased with this, and hope everyone else is too. Thanks.
Oops, thanks, Councillor Van Dawson. Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, just a question on this item. But first, I just want to thank the staff for incorporating a lot of the feedback from elected members and the community into this. That was a really job well done, and it was really tough. And as a non-statutory document, I'm just curious. So it's mentioned in here that I think it was hypothetical. It could be anything, but let's just say the 8-story development is one of the things that is referenced in here. If a future council wanted to adopt, say, a 6-story height limit, would there be anything that in the statutory documents of the planning scheme, is there anything that would be prohibiting that as a consideration in the future, or is this just merely a guide as a post where we are today, and in the future those decisions that will be made as far as actual planning guidelines, I guess?
The Director.
Through the chair, good question. It is a guiding document. There's been a lot of discussion around 8 stories, and words like high rise have been bandied around. It is about density and repopulating the city centre. It isn't a statutory document. In fact, the fund's going to begin with the scheme review and policy review, where those debates will be had. And there will be a lot of scrutiny around that, as there should be. And at the result of that planning framework, that's where we will be putting those height limits in. There is no blanket 8-story proposition in the city plan. It's very notional.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Archibald?
I'd just like to add that we did have a discussion about this a couple of days ago, but this document is still a very high-level document, and that whatever happens in the future, even with the work that the Director of Planning was referring to, we still have a great number of policies and frameworks that will protect the future consideration of heritage. So I think that message needs to be reiterated a little. These days it's a much more robust system than it's ever been, and I think that's really important to recognise. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Archibald. Councillors on the city plan, anything further? I might just have a few things to say on it. I mean, we have discussed the city plan extensively, and we've given feedback on a number of occasions, so I really don't want to wear out some of the conversation about this. But I do want to acknowledge that we often reference back to key moments in council's decision making which allowed for a step change in the city, and I know Amendment 49 was the culmination of a whole lot of work that happened around the Freo 2029 document, and there was key points where council realised that something different needed to happen, and I really hope in the future we look back at this point and say this was where we realised that something different needed to happen for Fremantle to thrive. And I think a lot of the root cause analysis about some of the things that are not working super well in Fremantle, whether that's streets feeling unsafe, whether that's shops being vacant, whether that's people feeling like they can't live in Fremantle because they can't afford anything or find anywhere appropriate for them to live. These are all root cause issues that the city plan is designed to address. So I agree with the comment, none of it means anything until it's in scheme and policy. But I think what's really encouraging is we've now got a vision we can go out to the broader world, whether that's the Planning Commission, whether that's developers, whether that's people who just hope that they can live in Fremantle one day, and say we do actually have a view about what the evolution of Fremantle should look like that will kick in well before the future of Fremantle, that is very long-term and effectively pie in the sky for a lot of people. So it's really important work, and it took a lot of work of this council to get to this point. So I just acknowledge the hours that everyone has put into this document and the template it now creates as well for other parts of our city planning as we go forward. All right. Councillor Sullivan?
Thanks, and I'll just pick up on what you were saying too, because as you referred to Amendment 49 and also the other amendment which was in the Northern Gateway, so when those two major scheme amendments were done, we didn't have a document like this, but we had an urgency to ensure that the city was ready for development as soon as possible. So we kind of like did it round the wrong way. We rushed ahead because we needed to. There was a strategic and economic imperative to do that at the time. And of course, we have a lot of developments that have been delivered because of that. But it didn't necessarily bring the community along for the ride. There was people in the community who felt that where has all this come from? And because it was basically changing the planning scheme, it was it's got a lot of black and white and planning language flying around and not necessarily put in the context that was, I guess the built form and urban environment sales document, because that's what really the city plan is. It's there to, I guess, give that framework, give that overview, create that image of the sort of city that we want to try and achieve. Now, we should have done that back then, but we know that these things take multiple years. We needed to get on and do Amendment 49 and the other one as quickly as we could, but this is the best way of doing it. I congratulate the staff for having this, because it will make the next round of amendments and the creation of the new scheme that much easier, because people will have been familiar with the vision that is in the city plan. So well done.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. All right, I'll put this one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. All right, to the scheme.
Sorry, I had made an error. I actually want to speak on number 21.
Cool. That's all right. We'll just quickly move this one. So do I have a mover for 17, the LPS, Councillor Williamson Wong, and a seconder for that one, Councillor Graham. Is there any debate on this one? Nope. I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. We've dealt with 18. 19. Do I have a mover for that one? Councillor Lorver, I'm guessing you'd like to move that one. And a seconder, Councillor Sullivan. So on 19, the culturally vibrant city.
I just wanted to thank the staff for all their work on this in such a short amount of time. I think we got to a really good place for us to be at right now, and I think the detailed work is still going to come, but getting everyone in the room, having that discussion was a really key step in this process, and I look forward to seeing the outcomes from this over the next 12 months. So I just wanted to thank the staff for all their work on that. Appreciate it.
Councillors on this one, Councillor Sullivan.
Yeah, thanks. I want to highlight that this is, for the community, this is stage one, in a sense. This is the initial fly through the issues. The level of consultation that we've done with the community has been rapid. It's certainly engaged the right people, but it's very preliminary. But I want to assure people that it's not the end of this process. There is a lot more work to be done. This just kind of identifies the broad framework and the opportunities that we have already been able to identify to start moving forward with a better approach. So congratulations to everyone who's been involved, and I guess ask the community to be on all sides of the conversation, to be patient as we hopefully go through the next phase.
And I think just to build on that, to reference the previous conversation we were having, it's critically important we do this work aligned with the work of the review of the scheme and the policies that go with it, because I think we've already identified the sort of key opportunities there are in that to preserve what is integral to Fremantle in terms of the live music industry and its interaction with all the other things we want to achieve through updating the scheme. So it's timely work, and I think, we've got to a principles perspective, but translating that to policy and scheme will be the really interesting bit. I just also want to highlight that the work that sort of we're signing off here to undertake baseline mapping of the existing noise profile file, I think there was a general consensus in the room with the people from industry that having more data and then being able to make better decisions based on real data is a genuine benefit. And looking at the cities where they're doing that better than we are right now has some massive opportunities. So, should we put that one to a vote? Yep. Okay, all those in favour? And that's unanimous. That takes us to the Economic Development Strategy, moved by Councillor Sullivan, who chaired the working group. Seconder for that one. Councillor Lorver. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. The first thing I'll note is that I thought I chaired the Economic Development Strategy Working Group, but this item
MOMOs. It's got
is
MOMOs
for
in
the
it.
Ecomomic, which is a wonderful term, but I'll leave that little humour aside because I'm sure the staff will be able to correct that little one. Look, and I did chair this working group, but I have to say that it was one of those chairing roles where you open the meeting and you hand over to the staff because it's really all of their work that they were producing, and there's a massive amount of information that was brought forward to the working group. And as someone that would normally chair planning stuff, not economic stuff, it was actually very interesting and very enlightening information, and I'm sure you've all read it as part of this agenda. But it's also information that's going to be very useful, I think, in the way both ourselves plan for future development in Fremantle, but also information that will be helpful to the community. And, that's what an economic development strategy, is in part. It's very much about demonstrating how great a place Fremantle is to invest in, to do business in, and what we need to do to make sure that we put our best foot forward to make that opportunity as good as it can be, and advocate for those opportunities at the state government and other levels, and also use it as a promotional tool in encouraging business to come into the Fremantle environment. We already know how much we love the place, but a document like this helps us sell that to the businesses that we know should be here in Fremantle. So thank you to the staff particularly, but also the Chamber of Commerce as well, who also had a representative on the working group. So thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. I also just wanted to speak briefly to the value of this work and particularly to the value of the data that's captured in the situational analysis report, which I think it's useful to us. It's really useful to us as policymakers and vision holders for the city, but it's also just hugely useful for anyone evaluating Fremantle and thinking, what is it that I might want to do here, or what is it that goes on here. It's really, really important information that we've got. And the other thing I'd acknowledge is even just by going through the process of engagement, we've started to see that some of the outcomes be delivered. So some of the sort of ideas like how do we support a blue economy hub are starting to turn into people in the blue economy talking to each other about how they might get together and create a blue economy hub. So without giving away too many secrets, I think the economic development strategy, the process and the outcome are really important. And what they do is they also really set us up for a period where we move beyond Fremantle as a fantastic tourism destination and all of those good things to a really thriving economic city that has contemporary modern jobs for the next 50 to 60 years. So it is a real, it's sort of alongside the city plan, quite a significant piece of work that sets a new direction for us. So good job. All right, I'll put this one to a vote. No one else wants to speak. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. That takes us to the commercial plan, Do I have a mover for that one? Someone wanted, yeah, Councillor Williamson Wong, and a seconder. Councillor Mofflin, Councillor Williamson Wong.
Thank you.
We're on the commercial plan.
Yes. I will be brief. I just wanted to note that there have been changes, which I appreciate, in there around the wording, specifically to the way we deal with our commercial properties. I think for me, I spoke to it at the IEM, it's important that while obviously the choices that we make with our property portfolio need to be financially sensible, we can't just be doing crazy things. We also really need to make sure we're considering our role as a local government in being a service provider, and also having a really important and unique role and opportunity in being able to assess the other benefits that come from a property portfolio. We're not holding them always for a commercial reason, and sometimes that is because there's a community benefit, like the meeting place or the art centre and these things. But similarly, I think there are community benefits when we have properties like the one that New Edition is in, which name escapes me now, but these properties that we hold are important because they shape the tenancies that we might have and the experiences within our city, and we're seeing that become increasingly important. And so I was happy to see those amendments in the policy, so I just wanted to note those.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson Wong. Councillor Graham.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, look, I just want to remind Council and make a comment about a couple of things in the report, and perhaps ask a question to the Director. It has in here that the Leisure Centre and the Arts Centre produce 4 million annually and 2.9 million annually, which sounds very good, but every budget meeting I've been to, those two enterprises are costing the council about $1 million to run. Now, I know there's the community benefit, which Councillor Williamson Wong, but it does seem a bit rubbery figure-ish if you read this, to think we're making so much money out of these, when in actual fact, it's my understanding, along with the Park Centre, that little triangle is mostly costing us about $2 million a year. So perhaps a comment, it's just my comment of this, because I do remind everybody at budget time, and I think it falls on a few deaf ears, but I had an opportunity tonight, so I've taken it.
All right, I might just get the Director to respond to that one.
Through the chair, yeah, they are purely revenue figures, so it's the revenue that those facilities generate, and the intent of reference to those facilities in this plan is to look at how we reduce the subsidy you mentioned that the city provides. So through some of the initiatives we want to deliver through this, yes, they generate revenue, but we want to look at how we might generate some additional revenue on top of that to, I guess, reduce some of the subsidy we provide across some of those services.
Councillor Mofflin.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to acknowledge the work of staff in regards to the commercial plan, and particularly this has been something that elected members have been asking for quite some time, to understand how we do and can manage our commercial properties across the city, and particularly to have those principles which inform the management and investment in commercial properties. I think that bodes well for us as a council to be clear about how all those decisions that we do make in the future, and also to support staff to identify opportunities to enhance our commercial portfolio if the opportunity ever does arise. And it actually, yeah, I suppose reflecting on this as well kind of makes me think about all those little pieces of work that the city is just knocking off at the moment, which is really valuable to ensure that future councils don't need to be doing that thinking about what's necessarily required from a principal perspective, but can concentrate on that decision making. So I think, yeah, it's a really positive outcome.
And future councillors are just going to have to do a whole lot of reading should they join this council. Councillor Archibald.
I very much support what Councillor Mofflin has said, but I'd also like to add that I think it's really great that the community can see that we have a portfolio like this. I think it's a really positive thing, and that we want to make that portfolio do a lot more heavy lifting for the city so that it can mean that we can do far more with our financial capacity than we currently do. So I think it's excellent that we're now looking at it with that lens, and hopefully we'll be able to improve the outcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I might put that one to a vote then. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. That takes us to the procurement policy. Councillor Mofflin, did you want to move that one? Seconder for the procurement policy. Councillor Kamada, excellent. Councillor Mofflin.
Yeah, and I'll move straight away to my amendments for that, so I look for a seconder to support those.
We have a seconder for the amendments. Councillor Kamada, yeah.
Thank you. And relatively self-explanatory, but for those who may not be as familiar with the Audit and Risk Committee, at our last meeting, we were presented with findings from the Office of the Auditor General, particularly in regards to purchasing card use and hospitality expenditure. And the reason that I've brought these handful of changes across the policy was to be a little more specific in addressing that recommendation from the OAG, which spoke to developing and implementing staff travel, hospitality, alcohol for staff and council members, etc. Usage that align with business use and community expectations. So the respective changes talk to, one, minimising the number of purchasing cards across the organisation to help manage risks associated with that, and then specifically calling out the use for hospitality being for the purpose of official city activities, and also then the approval process being really explicit about not just hospitality, but calling out food, beverage, alcohol, and that the executive leadership team process and ensuring that the respective approvals are in place when those purchases occur.
Thank you, Councillor Mofflin. On the amendment? All right, let's put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour? And back to the item as amended. No further speakers. I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's also unanimous. All right, we'll go to the release for North Fremantle Associated Clubs. We have a mover for that one, Councillor Van Dawson, seconded by Councillor Thompson. On the lease, any speakers, or do we go to a vote? Councillor Van Dawson?
Oh, just because I moved it, I thought I'd just say a few words. But yeah, no, it's just great to see this come up tonight. I know the club's really appreciative of it and supports us approving this lease. So yeah, it's great for the associated club, the North Fremantle Associated Clubs, and gives them certainty that they can get on with their plans for the property. So yeah, thank you. I'm
Thanks,
just really
Councillor.
pleased this came up so soon, so thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Van Dawson. Councillor Kamada?
Yeah, very quickly, I agree with Councillor Van Dawson 100%. It was nice to see Mr Abreu come into the chamber tonight and see that they're well and truly on board and willing to work with the city. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, again, great heavy lifting from the leasing team to get that one done, because it was a fairly significant change for them to get their heads around, and they have obviously got to a very positive place with it, which is great. Let's get more leases ticked off. It's really good. All right, put that one to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Go to the Urban Forest Plan review. Mover for that one. Looking at Councillor Lang, but you know I don't have to. Councillor Lang, seconded by Councillor Lorber. If you don't want to speak on it, I've got an amendment, but if you did, now would be the time.
Only quick note was I really appreciate the team. This came to council a few months ago, and the suggestions were let's go back and look at the work we did in 2021. We did that. I think what's really important to note here is we've had a few bites at the cherry at our urban forest plan. Obviously, we've developed it. It had ambitious goals. It got, I guess, critiqued by our community. Fremantle Environmental Network critiqued the plan and called us out for saying you're not hitting your targets. That was a few years ago. Since then, we did significant work on it, Ryan, looking at you, mate, because I know we've put a bit of pressure on you for costing this out. But the key things are, we've identified we weren't hitting the target. We've asked the team to review it. We did that in 2021. We've checked it again, and we've now acknowledged that we're not going to meet the target, which is fine. And we're now extending it out a few more years, which means we will hit the target. I guess you can have a crazy ambitious goal, but not all of them may be achievable. So acknowledging that and extending it by a few years is pretty sensible. And just for information, I mentioned earlier the meeting we had with the Southwest Group. Kwinana did this also. They mapped, identified the gaps, realised that they need to plant about 2,000 trees a year. They're obviously a larger local government than us. They then said that's going to cost $2 million to do that. Are we comfortable spending that money? They went to a community survey. 70% people came back and said, yes, we want to do it. And it was approved. So you have a audacious goal. You have significant numbers of trees to put in, but costing that out, if Kwinana, is saying you're $1,100 a tree, that's what they cost to put in and maintain properly. And there's value in calculating that as well, is for when someone rips a tree up or backs over it. I think we're more likely to protect that or chase after someone that might have vandalised the city property. So we invest this money now, pays dividends in 20 years, but also noting that once this investment has been finished in, I'm not sure the year, but it's only a few years away now. It's a big budget investment now, but that won't always be there. It'll just be infill maintenance and spot planting here and there. So good investment, and just thanks to the team for extending out that duration to a more achievable target.
Thanks, Councillor Lang. Councillor Sullivan?
Yeah, thanks. I also really appreciate the data that we're starting to get. And I wanted to highlight the new systems that staff have been putting in place, particularly, computerising every street tree that's out there into a tablet that you see the staff walking around, with their work gear on, and they've got the little tablet there, and they know every tree. Well, they don't know every tree yet because they're not all registered, but the vast majority of them are. And I just wanted to an anecdote when we were planting the peace tree, the ginkgo, that someone came up to us and said, "Oh, there's a tree down at Leighton Beach that's needs some attention, rather." And literally, the tablet came out and was like, "Okay, where's that tree?" We were able to pinpoint it, could pull up the picture of it, write it in the notes, and send the staff around to deal with it immediately. It was unbelievable, and a real eye opener for me to see that level of sophistication in the management of our trees as well. I think the other thing is, as someone that's been involved, in tree planting for a very long time, I also note the significant improvement over the last few years, particularly in the way in which we both plant trees and also we manage the trees and water the trees in a way that's going to significantly improve survival rates and the like. And the last thing I'd say is, now that we've sort of got clearer data, the notion that by 2031, there'll be almost a 50%, or in fact more than a 50% increase in the street trees in Fremantle is the sort of strategy that our community has been asking for. So this is really starting to deliver what we all knew, is that Fremantle needed an urban forest, and we're making significant steps now into achieving that. I know I put a lot of pressure on the staff at budget time, demanding that we go from the 600 trees to 900, and I appreciate the work that they've done now to bring this back and to demonstrate that, yes, they're going to be able to have the capacity to do that for our community. So it's much appreciated.
Thanks, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Lorber?
Yeah, I do also support the work that staff have done, often with not enough resources behind it to get a lot of trees into the ground, and it's just amazing to what we're achieving, because At the end of the day, if we want to grow our urban canopy, there is a cost to that. And, you know, if we want to adequately resource, you know, ramping it up, we need to do that as a council. And we allocated between $600,000 and $700,000 on a, you know, $110 million budget. Kwinana, we just heard tonight, the $105 million budget allocated $2 million. So we're doing what we can with the resources that we're providing staff, and I think that's really important. We also have a policy that we adopted not that long ago that will be coming back to this, or a council, future council for review. And there are other items included in that initial NOM that could potentially help us grow our urban canopy. While it is very important that we plant street trees and we plant trees in our parks and reserves, it's the loss of trees on private property that is really dragging our canopy coverage down. And so it'll be exciting to see other steps that we could potentially take to help our urban forest grow, both across city-owned properties and across the entire city as a whole. So again, thanks for all the work you guys have put into this. You've done an amazing job with the resources that have been provided. So thank the staff.
Thanks. All right, I might go to the amendment then. So that's coming up on the screen. Do I have a seconder for the amendment? Councillor Sullivan, thank you. All I wanted to do here was just make it clear that we didn't sort of have a oops moment that we had a shortfall of trees, that there were fairly considered and, if I recall, extensive discussions about trees, I think at every budget that we've considered together, and that there were a variety of factors there, including the COVID years, but also really issues of the quality of trees that we were able to get, the internal resourcing to make sure that when trees were in the ground, they were actually able to be maintained in a way that they were a good investment. I just wanted to make sure that, kind of for the benefit of the long term, people looking back and thinking, you know, it seems a bit rough to just read, oh, we had a target and we missed it, that there were some factors that contributed to that, and it wasn't a blind kind of error at the time, because I think it was very well discussed and debated. Is there anyone on the amendment who wished to speak? No? All right, I'll put the amendment to a vote. All those in favour? Yep, that's unanimous. And back to the item as amended. I'll put that one to a vote as well. Councillor Lang, you look like you're about to press a button.
I was going to just close.
Please do.
Make it just another comment. On item 3 there, I guess that's the future where we're going next. Getting this target, getting this budget and getting these trees in is critical for our canopy, but the next stage is really refining what we're doing. Councillor Sullivan touched on it. We're using the data, but we're going to get better next year, hopefully. If we do this our canopy mapping for the first time in a decade, we can hone in on the locations that we need to work on the most and maximise the value of everything we're planting. So, yeah, this long time coming, and as it's touched on there, there was a bit of a pause during the COVID years. So I'm very pleased as I'm finishing council to see that we've finally got the budget, got the resource, and we can deliver this target. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Councillor Lang. So I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. Even the seagulls seem to be on board. All right. If you can go to the second last page of your run sheet, I'd love to know if there are any items that people wish to speak on from item 25 through to 33. If you could just call out any items that you wish to speak on.
27.
27. Any other items, folks? Nope, you're all good. I will then suggest that we move on block. 25, tender fleet replacement. 26, tender third floor commercial fit out. 28, corporate report. 29, statement of investments. 30, schedule of payments. 31, monthly financial reports. 32, budget amendments. And 33, working group information report. Everyone's comfortable with that? Moved by Councillor Sullivan, seconded by Councillor Graham. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. So we'll go back to 27. Councillor Thompson, you'd like to move that one?
Yes, I'll move it, Madam Chair.
And seconded by Councillor Graham. Councillor Thompson.
I don't have any problem with it. I just thought this is the only time I think I've ever seen us councillor meeting. So I thought it was just simply worth doing it as a standalone, that's all.
Councillor Graham, did you have anything to say on this matter?
Concur with Councillor Thompson.
Very good. All right, I'll put that to a vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. And go over the page. We have no motions of which previous notice has been given, no urgent business, no late items, no confidential business. So I'll declare the meeting closed at 8:50 p.m. Thank you.